Thank you. What up, though? Let's hear it if you're from East Side. Hey, let's hear it if you're from West Side. If you're part of the graduating class of 2024, let me hear it. Like Principal said, my name's Ashok, and I run a technology company. We work on some things like helping folks turn cars on with their cell phones, or work with Honda to help sell cars online, or companies like Rocket Mortgage to help people get their mortgages online. We're not going to talk about that too much, though. We're going to talk about a few stories from my life and some things that I wish someone had told me when I graduated high school. The first one is a confession. And if I'm honest, there's very few people, even my friend Frank, that may not know about this. I was kicked out of university. Between my junior and senior year, I failed a couple of classes, and my GPA came down so low that, as per the university rules, I had to leave at least for a year, and during that year, I had to get my grades back up. Now, there's times when life is really lucky to you, and that was one of those times, because in Canada, it's very typical that between your junior and senior year, a lot of the engineering students will take a year off to go work on an internship and then come back, do your last year and graduate. I was lucky that before I failed all these courses and I wrecked my report card, I managed to get an internship. So that 1 year that I was kicked out, everyone thought I was just working on internship like all the other smart kids. And during that time, not only did I do summer school and do a lot better at school and get my GPA high enough to get back, I really fell in love with work. A few things that I learned there that I didn't quite realize back then were not all teaching styles were meant for me. I learned in a different way than a lot of my classmates did. I did a lot better at work than I did at school, and I can draw a picture from where that first job building software at General Motors helped me really start a company. And the third thing is that I learned a lot more failing out of school than in the classes that I got A's. I had to do a lot of work talking to the dean, knowing who to talk to, knowing what to say, and all those things that I figured out when I had a plan and the plan didn't work out and I had to make a new plan. That's what starting a business is like. You think you have a plan, things change all the time, and you do a lot better the better you can respond to plans than trying to stick to a plan. The second story is also a confession. Before I told you the first story, you might have thought that I'm really disciplined and I have my stuff together and I plan ahead of time. Well, this confession is that it wasn't until Saturday that I sat down and started writing the speech. Miss Ann asked me to do it in January when we went after another talk that I did. So I've known about it for 5 or 6 months, right? And there are two ways that I could have sat down on Saturday to start writing. If it was 3 or 4 years ago, I would have sat down and the voice in my head would have said, "You are so lazy. You don't care about the students who are graduating. You don't have your stuff together. You lack in discipline. You always do this." I still would have sat down and I would have typed something up for the speech. Thankfully, that's not the conversation I had with myself. And don't get me wrong, it took some help and a really patient therapist to really help change that voice. But instead, on Saturday when I sat down, I said, "Hey, pal, the speech is coming up Wednesday. I know you care a lot about these graduating students. I know when you had lunch with them, you got to talk to a few of them, and you're really inspired and you're really excited for them. So you don't want to mess this up. And I also know that you're scared of not showing up and doing great. And that's the reason you haven't sat down yet. The good news is the way your brain works, you've been thinking about ideas since January on what you want to say. You just haven't sat down and written it. So we know you're going to do great. We know you have a process. Why don't you sit down and do it? In that case, too, I sat down and started writing. The difference is, before, when I was really unkind to myself and I sat down, I would have this cloak of guilt and shame, and I wouldn't really be typing or expressing myself from a place of love and hope. It'd be out of obligation or fear of messing up. Now that I've learned to talk to myself differently, I sat down feeling really excited for all of you, really proud of all of you, and hoping to make any little difference in the adventures that you lie ahead. And it just felt way lighter to do. And when I started typing, I lost track of time. So the thing there that I wish someone had told me is that a lot of people would say, treat others like you want to be treated. Speak to others like you want to be spoken to. And not enough times that I hear, speak to yourself like you speak to others. Speak to yourself like you speak to people you love. And inspire that love and hope inside you so that you can bring your best. The third one is not a confession, but I could use y'all help, because there are two camps amongst all my friends when I did this, okay? And I wore these sneakers intentionally. When I came to have lunch with y'all, I saw y'all also, a bunch of y'all rocking Air Jordan 1s. And you'll notice these don't have swooshes on them. And that's because I ripped them out. And the two camps of people, and let me know which one you're in. Either you think that's blasphemy, you can't do that to Jordans, or you think you paid for the shoes, Michael Jordan got paid, you can do whatever you want. Who's in the first camp? Who says it's blasphemy? No, respect to that. And who's on the other camp that says, hey, he bought the shoes, he can do what he wants? Respect to that too. So my last story is about a pair of shoes, but I was 10 years old. And back then, I grew up in the Middle East, and I used to watch a lot of sports: tennis, cricket, Formula One, and soccer, or football as we called it. You could show me a pair of sneakers, and I could guess which tennis player or cricket player wore them. That's just how much I love sneakers too. And my mom's dad, my grandfather, also loved sports and fashion, and he loved pampering me, taking me to sports or buying me shoes. My mom, of course, did not like that at all. She was worried that if her boy got pampered, he'd grow up to be a spoiled brat. This one year, I remember there's this pair of shoes. They were white with the red soles, just like these ones. My grandfather saw me looking at them in a magazine and just saw how excited I was, and he said, hey, I think I can get you this pair. Of course, my mom was like, nuh-uh. He didn't earn those. He's not going to take care of them. Thankfully, that day, my grandfather and I had our way, and I got the pair of shoes. He got to pamper his grandson, and my mom got over it. And a few months later, I love sneakers so much that if you looked in my notebooks, on the margins, there were drawings of either sneakers or cars. And I sat down to paint one day, and I couldn't think of what to paint. I looked around for inspiration. There were these sneakers that I love. They're my favorite pair. And I said, hey, instead of copying those onto my notebook, what if I paint the sneakers? Now, mind you, this was over 20 years ago. There weren't a lot of people that did this. There's none that I knew about when I was 10 or 12. It was just a voice inside me that said, hey, you draw sneakers all day, you could probably make these sneakers better. And so I laid out the newspaper, made sure not to mess up the floor or anything, took my time, had different kinds of paintbrushes to be really specific. And I was really nervous, I'll be honest, because these were my favorite sneakers. And when I got done the first shoe, I was amazed at how much I loved them. So much so that I said, hey, this is the right plan. Let's do the other one too. And when I was done looking at them, I just couldn't wait to go to school the next day, show my friends, go to practice the next day, show my teammates, show my brothers, show my parents. And just then, as luck would have it, the door starts to open to the room that my brother and I shared, and it was my mom. And I couldn't wait to show her. I couldn't wait for her to tell me how great of a shoe designer I am. I hear some laughs because you could guess what my mom did. She tore me a new one, as they say. She ripped right into me. She yelled at me. Instead of saying, how beautiful of a designer you are, she asked me, what's wrong with me? Why can't I take care of my things? Why don't I appreciate gifts that are given to me? Why don't I respect my ancestors? I was sad. It was totally the opposite of what I was expecting. And worst of all, she handed me a cloth and soap water and made me clean up the art that I was so delighted about. So I'm sitting there crying, and trust me, the shoes may or may not have looked good. Who knew I was 12? But I tell you, they look better than a pair of shoes that used to be painted, because that's not a good look for anyone, right? As much as I was really sad then, what I didn't realize until recently was, number one, my mom came from a place of love. What she saw really put some fear in her that I wasn't growing up to be the man she hoped I would be. Now, I don't agree with the way she said it, but I respect where she came from. Speaking of, where's my guy BJ? There you are. When I got to have lunch with everyone here, I was lucky enough to talk to BJ, and he was talking about seeing things from other people's perspective. He may or may not have been talking about Mr. Harvey. I can't combine this. And he said, hey, I understand where he's coming from. I don't always appreciate the way he says it. And the fact that you said that at your age, and I didn't figure it out until my 30s, just shows me that you're going to go a really long way. The last thing there is that voice that told me to paint those sneakers. That day, like many other days like that, I bet, without anyone else knowing or doing it intentionally, the volume got turned down on that voice. And I imagine that's happened to everyone here at some point. And that voice is what makes you who you are, gives you your gift for everybody else. So my ask is that you try and find that voice and turn the volume up on it so that you can bring more of that gift to the world. And the last thing's not a story, it's just something that I want to share with everyone, is that at that age, I was really lucky that my dad was in computers, so we had a computer at home. Not all my friends did. And he needed the internet for his work, so we had internet at home. Most of my friends didn't. And I was able to learn to use the internet well before everybody else, and that's helped me a lot now. We live in a time now where if you have internet and a computer, you can teach yourself almost anything through YouTube or ChatGPT or all the other free training that's out there. And I know that there's a lot of access to internet through libraries and other places here, but not necessarily to laptops. So something that Miss Ann and I are working on, and I checked with my team at Integral, we had some laptops in storage, so we want to make sure that everyone here who doesn't have access to a laptop that's graduating has one as you're going on to the rest of your adventures. Make art with them, listen to that voice, learn everything that's available to you from the internet. So with that, I'll just summarize and say that it's not about sticking to the plan and graduating with the straight A's. It's about overcoming the surprises and finding your way back to it. It's not about doing things like the best students do or the people around or what they pretend to. It's about finding the way that you like to learn and you like to do work and treating yourself with love and kindness. Because I promise you, the more you do that, the easier and more naturally you will show love and kindness to everyone else around you. And that's been true for me. And the last thing is, like I've said, find that creative voice inside you and let it shine. And when someone around you is being vulnerable and showing you their creative voice, put them on a stage. Thank you very much. Congratulations, class.